and welcome to another video. This is my February wrap up, and in February I read a total of 6 books, so not as many as in January, which I think was like 14, but I mean there is one that's a very large book in this stack, so yeah, I'm okay with 6 books, absolutely fine. So 5 of them, I just had to recount that there, make sure it was definitely 6. So 5 of them I read for vlogs. I had 3 where I did a romance vlog. I did one where it was going to visit Jane Austen's house and reading one of her books, and then there was one that I got from the library and I did a library vlog, and then the final book was one I just read anyway. It wasn't for a vlog or anything like that. So let's have a look at the 6 books that I read. So first of all was a reading vlog where I read 3 romances, and I read This Year's For Me and You, and this is by Emily Bell, who's meant to be like a well-known romance author for like Christmas time. So this one is basically set around New Year's, and we're following Hannah and Celeste. They're best friends, and they have this pact where every New Year's Eve they spend it together, and then when Hannah dies in this accident, Celeste is left with this list of a New Year's resolution that Hannah put together, and so she decides that she's going to do this New Year's resolution. There's quite a few on there, so one for every month of the year, and she basically, you see her go on this journey where she's trying to find herself. She's trying to like come to terms with the death of her best friend. She's trying to deal with grief. So she's on this almost like an adventure, doing all these things that Hannah put together as a New Year's resolutions. And it also brings across a little bit of a romance. With this book, the romance isn't the main thing to the story. It's in the main part of the story, which I absolutely love, because it was more about friendship and the love within friendships, and there is, you know, the talk of loss and grief as well in this. I just felt it was very, you know, it hit the heart a little bit. It really did. And I really liked the main character Celeste as well, and yeah, I just thought it was just a very nice, wholesome story that wasn't focusing too much on the romance. Also, the title, This Year's For Me and You, is a reference to Fairy Tale of New York by the Pogues, which is like my favourite all-time Christmas song, and so that also made me absolutely love it. And there's a whole scene where they basically have that as their song, the 2 friends, and I just absolutely love it, absolutely love it. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars. And then I read 8 Perfect Hours. Is it Leah Lewis, I think is the name of the author? I might be pronouncing that wrong. So this is following Noelle and Sam, and basically Noelle is coming back from a college reunion, and it's like 10 years since she's been at school. And on the way back, she's stuck in this traffic jam because there's a snowstorm. We kind of learn a bit about her. She's caring for her mum, and she's really concerned about getting back to her mum. And she's basically put her whole life on hold to care for her mum. And we kind of see that she's a bit stressed out because her phone battery is dying. And there's a guy in the car next to her in this traffic jam called Sam, who basically says, oh yeah, you can use my phone charger and sit in the car for company and stuff like that. And they spend 8 hours together. And you kind of see them chatting and getting along really well. And then obviously when the traffic starts to go, they kind of think, well, we're never going to see each other anyway. That's that. But fate kind of has other ideas. So you kind of see them have these chance meetings, which is very coincidental and did annoy me at first. But then I started to realise, like, you know, the meaning behind it. And there's this whole tale in there, this whole like meaning behind it, which basically is a Chinese myth where everyone is connected to their soulmate by a red thread. And this thread can, you know, tangle itself up and tie itself up in knots, but it will never break. And the idea is that everyone is connected to their soulmate somehow, and at one point in their lives they will come together. And I just absolutely loved that. I loved it. So the coincidental meetings I ended up really liking and was really rooting for Noelle and Sam. So yeah, it was a book that I thoroughly enjoyed and gave 4 stars. And then I read a page turn book, which is ideal for February, like a very well-known romance author. This one is called The Minute I Saw You, and this is following Hannah and Sunny. And when they meet, Hannah is basically straight away attracted to Sunny. Straight away looks at him, is like, oh, and he's kind of got like this bad boy image at first. So his character, you kind of have to get to know a bit more. As the story goes on, you start rooting for him, but at the beginning he's just like this bad boy, and I'm not a fan of bad boys. I'm really not. So yeah, I didn't warm to him at first, but you kind of see that both of them have a lot of, you know, they both got a past, and they are trying to overcome this past, and that's basically causing them to each push the other one away and not be looking for romance, not be looking for relationships because of what's happened to them in the past. I would suggest checking the trigger warnings with this book, because the author does go into quite difficult topics when talking about both of these main characters' pasts. Like, there are some troubling discussions within this book. I would definitely suggest checking the trigger warnings for this, because there are a lot of trigger warnings with it. But you basically see these 2 characters that are kind of almost like flawed characters. They've both got, you know, their problems, and it's all stemmed from their pasts. And you kind of see them obviously attracted to each other, but scared to, you know, go anywhere with each other, or even form a relationship, or even a friendship. They're kind of pushing each other away because they kind of feel like each of them both feel like they don't deserve happiness and love. And so yeah, it's difficult topics. It's a hard one, but you are rooting for these 2 characters. I did really like them in the end, and really wanted them to get together. I wanted them to have a happy ending. So yeah, I gave it 4 stars. Then I read a book where I went to the library, took out a book, and I decided to not go for romance, and instead I went for horror, which is Nosferatu by Joe Hill. So Joe Hill is the son of Stephen King, and you can definitely tell that Stephen King has a massive influence on Joe Hill. Definitely. The writing, you can see he's just basically taken from his dad. And I wouldn't say it's a particularly bad thing. But yeah, there was times in this book where I kind of felt like it just waffled on a bit. And although when I read a Stephen King book, I absolutely love it if it's a really big book and he's waffling on a bit, it doesn't bother me. But this one, it just wasn't as done as well. And I know you shouldn't really compare the 2. I just basically had high hopes for this book because I have been wanting to read this book for such a long time. And I finally read it, and it didn't live up to my high expectations, I don't think. It wasn't something that I properly absolutely loved. I gave it 3 stars. It's basically following Victoria McQueen. She basically has some sort of powers where she can ride her bike, goes across this bridge, and she can turn up somewhere, finds things. So there's very much like a bit of a sci-fi element to it. There's also like a bit, almost like a supernatural element, which you kind of go through the book wondering whether it's supernatural or not, kind of thing. And she basically gets escapes from this child serial killer called Charlie Manx, who's obviously a very bad villain. And we kind of see, her, overcoming this when she's escaped, and then when she's older, and Charlie Manx basically gets out of prison and goes after her because he wants to get revenge on her because he blames her for ending up in prison. And so he goes for something that's going to hurt her the most. So he takes her son. and you then see her basically doing anything and everything in her power to save her son and to go after this Charlie Manx and basically kill him to get her son. That's what she wants to do. She just wants her son. And you know, I really liked her character. So Vic's character I really liked. You can really fault it. You see her as a child and then you see her as an adult. And yeah, I did really like her character. I just kind of feel like this book didn't live up to its hype, in my opinion. So I was a little bit disappointed, but I did still enjoy it. There was just a moment in between where I was a bit like, you know what, this is dragging a little bit, but not a bad book, not a bad book. I then read Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, and I also did the vlog where I went to her house as well, which was absolutely stunning. And this, yeah, what can you say? I mean, I think everyone really kind of knows the story of Pride and Prejudice. So it's about Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy. I wouldn't say this was really a massive romance book, to be honest. I kind of feel like the film plays on the romance a lot more. I haven't watched the film yet, but I've seen clips of it, like the river, and I kind of feel like the movie kind of plays a massive part in the romance, whereas in the book, it's the romance isn't like this big thing. It's very subtle. There's not really much of a romance, as it were, and yeah, you're basically just following a bunch of very wealthy, rich, well, obviously rich because they're very wealthy, well-to-do people back in the 1800s. And you've got this character Elizabeth, who I absolutely loved, who is not your typical female of the 1800s. She basically wants to not be the stereotypical woman. And I absolutely love that about her. I think her character is absolutely amazing. I thoroughly loved this character. So yeah, I don't know, I just think there's lots to this book that I absolutely loved. I just kind of feel like the writing style is a bit jarring at times and does take some getting used to. For like the first 100 pages, I was a bit like, why is everyone raving about this and loving this? So it took a while for me to get into it, but once I was into it, I then was really enjoying it. And I kind of feel like it was thanks to the character of Elizabeth. So yeah, I did end up enjoying it. I gave it 3 stars. And then the top book of the month with 5 stars is The Time Traveller's Wife by Audrey Niffenegger. This book, wow, I absolutely loved it. And the ending, I was sobbing. I was at work and I had to turn my phone off for like 5 minutes, which is really bad, I know. I had to turn it off just so I could stop sobbing because I didn't want the phone to ring and me having to answer the phone whilst I was like this bawling mess. So yeah, the ending got me big time. But this basically follows Claire and Henry, and you see when they first meet when Claire's 6 and he is 36, but he's time traveling. And you kind of see her growing up and constantly watching out for him. And then they meet in real time in like the present when he's not going between the past and the future because he time travels, obviously, time traveler's wife. I just had to maneuver myself. So yeah, you see this relationship forming. And it's, I don't know, the author's done such an amazing job with this book. It's so clever, like so clever. I was, you know, you're rooting for them the whole time. I mean, they could be a bit more lovable, the characters, to be fair. They do have some sort of flaws. So they're not perfect, but I don't know, the whole idea, the whole premise of it, you know, I just was like amazed by it, to be honest. It's a bit of a chunkier book. It's over 500 pages. There are times where it did slow down, the pace did slow down a little bit, but at the end of the day, I just think it was so well done. The writing was really clever. The writing style was excellent. The whole premise of it was really clever, and I just had a fun time with it. You're obviously seeing this, it's not your typical romance because you're seeing them at different times and different stages in their lives as well, and them going through some like horrendous stuff as a result of this time traveling situation. I don't know, I think the author just did an amazing job with it, and I was proper invested in this romance. And yeah, like I said, the ending just, I think that was what made it from a 4 to a 5-star read, because that ending, and I was just bawling my eyes out. I couldn't help it, I was crying. And at one point I even texted Paul to say, like, tell him that I loved him and all of this because of what was happening in this book. I was like missing Paul, because I was thinking, I was proper relating to Claire and just imagining what it would be like where, you know, your partner isn't always around, even at the like major times that you definitely need them there. And I don't know, it really hit me. Many points in this book, it really hit me to the point where I was like thinking about my own relationship. I was messaging Paul to say that I missed him. Like, it was, you know, making me think good and proper, this book. So yeah, that's what you want for February, isn't it? Because February is the month of romance. It is the only month where I really read romance books. I'm quite surprised that this month I'm actually giving 4 and 5 stars to the romance books that I've read, because yeah, that's not a usual thing for me, because romance is usually a miss. So to have 4 and 5 stars on the romances that I've read, I'm quite impressed with that. So yeah, it was a good bunch of books that I read, obviously mainly romance. There was one that wasn't a romance, but yeah, I've had a good reading month, even though it wasn't as many books as January. January I definitely read a lot more in, but yeah, I still thoroughly enjoyed my reading experience. Obviously this is the top book of the month, let's be honest. I am still reading A Tempest of Tea, which has just recently been released, but there was no way I was going to finish that before the end of this month, so it's going to be in my March wrap up. But I am thoroughly enjoying that, and I think it's possibly going to be a 5-star. But that is my February wrap up. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will be back very soon with another one. Bye.